I looked at him and said, you wanted this and you got it, right? You wanted this and you continue to get it. You continue to not just get it, but allow other people to get it and facilitate these possibilities for people to just understand what it even means to navigate a predominantly white space, like the film industry. I think that definitely helped us to see each other. Thieves in the Night, you said, Warrington?
That's it.
This is Arts Educators Save the World, where successful artists and their mentors talk about how arts education transformed their lives. Hey, welcome back to Arts Educators Save the World, a podcast where artists and their mentors talk about the impact of arts education on both their lives. Today is a throwback episode. Alec and I got a chance to talk with one of our high school friends who we met making theater. His name is Loren Hammonds. You will get to know a lot more about him. Loren is also a graduate of both Hunter Elementary School and Hunter High School. So Alec and I grew up making art with Loren. He still is, a singer, a performer, an MC, but is now a filmmaker and a producer and the head of documentary for Time Studios. And when we reached out to Loren to ask about a conversation between him and his film mentor, he brought us the amazing Warrington Hudlin, who I cannot wait for folks to hear stories from. And probably the most interesting thing, because we asked Loren who he wanted to bring, we didn't know what form of mentorship that would take. And this is a pretty informal mentorship relationship. You know, we've talked with folks who have had explicit mentors in mentorship programs or even shared professional spaces. This is a mentorship that bloomed out of what Warrington described as Loren just showing up, being in the places where cool things were happening and being around successful filmmakers and producers until they gave him a seat at the table, and hearing about how that relationship developed and blossomed and what it has done for both of their careers was really, really exciting.
First of all, it was great to see Loren. We weren't close, but I knew him in high school, and how strange just to see someone after 30 years was great. But also I don't want to say be introduced to a new art form, but close to it. I mean, you'll hear what they talk about, this immersive filmmaking, this semi-virtual reality filmmaking. They will describe it better than I have, as I have not explained it at all. But, you know, obviously I know that pottery exists. I'm aware of glass, but I know absolutely nothing. And it's just when you're in your own art form so deeply, and it's just spend your whole day and then just meet someone just who's tangential to your, you know, whose work is tangential to yours. You use some of the same equipment, kind of live a little bit of the same artist life, but just a completely different rabbit hole and just a completely different universe of challenges, of media that they're using. And so I was just like, oh, that's a thing. I didn't really know that was a thing. And so it was just great to me to hear about a new thing, I said, out there in the world.
An emerging field within film. It's cool to hear about how people learn to make things that don't totally exist yet. Listeners, it is my honor to introduce Peabody Award-winning, Emmy-nominated producer and head of documentary at Time Studios, Loren Hammonds. Loren's had 6 projects released in 2024 alone, ranging from a Sundance Award-winning documentary about Frida Kahlo to Vitalik and Ethereum story about a young Russian-Canadian programmer who built a blockchain crypto company, and his most recent release, Megan Thee Stallion in her own words. In 2022, his film Katrina Babies won the Best New Documentary Director Award at the Tribeca Film Festival. In addition to documentary film, Loren is a field leader in immersive and virtual reality storytelling. Before joining Time Studios, Loren served as Vice President of Immersive Programming at Tribeca Enterprises and was a senior programmer for the Tribeca Festival. He is invited to speak all over the world about cinematic and immersive storytelling, including at Cannes Film Festival, Sundance, South by Southwest, and, my internet trolling tells me, upcoming at the Australian International Documentary Conference in Melbourne. I don't know if we'll get into this much in this podcast, but I thought it was worth mentioning that Loren's first artistic love was music. In fact, Loren is still connected with his live hip-hop band Dugious, which I have followed around since they were formed when we were just out of high school in the late 1990s. According to Wikipedia, quote, the three vocalists attended elementary school together, which is where they conceived the word Dugious, which they have claimed is a shape-shifting word that means all things good in various interviews, unquote. It's worth noting that this elementary school and its music teacher is the same one featured on the very first episodes of our podcast. Yes, Loren is also a student of the great Miss Barbara Ames, music teacher to Lin-Manuel Miranda, Robert Lopez, Alec, and of course, myself. Suffice it to say, I have known Loren a long time, but I've never had the chance to talk with him about his highly successful career as a producer and cinematic storyteller. I'm excited to do so today. Loren, welcome to the show.
Erica, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Yay. Well, for your first job, I'd like you to bring our actual star of our podcast into the conversation today and introduce your mentor.
Yes, let's. Okay. Warrington Hudlin is a producer, director, editor, host, actor, martial artist, VR creator. I can keep going, founder. And he has been one of the most influential mentors for countless filmmakers and creatives for decades. He was vice chair of the board of trustees for the Museum of Moving Image for over 19 years. And as the founding president of the Black Filmmaker Foundation, Warrington created a space for a community of Black filmmakers who were looking for a means of connection. And that organization is now into its fourth decade. As producer of films like House Party and Boomerang and groundbreaking TV like HBO's Cosmic Slop, his work is legendary. And he has also been an incredible friend and mentor to me. Please welcome Warrington Hudlin.
This is great. Well, I would love to get us started by both of you telling us the story of the time you remember first working together. We've found that the origin story of mentorship is a really great place to get started. And it's okay if it's not the same story. I didn't ask you to plan in advance. So if you have different memories of first working together, that's great too.
It's probably best that way, right? If it's different stories. I can get started and just say, I was just such a huge fan of Warrington's work, coming up as a film lover. And when I started working at Tribeca, I actually started working at Tribeca as an event producer for the festival. And at the time, Warrington was on the board of Tribeca Film Institute. When I heard he was on the board, I was like, I gotta meet this guy. I gotta see him. And just somehow, and I believe there was an event at Tribeca Cinemas, private event at Tribeca Cinemas, and Jane Rosenthal, the founder of Tribeca Film Festival, introduced us. And I was, of course, thrilled to meet him and had no idea that we would actually, strike up a friendship over these years. And I think Warrington reminded me a few years ago when I left Tribeca and started at Time. He was like, I remember you were putting tables up at events. And it was true. I was doing everything. I was like doing Q&As and putting tables up and everything. And it took a lot, but it was so great to be seen by him.
But Lauren, you're being very, very kind, very generous. But I think we go back even further than that.
Okay, let's go.
Unless my recollection is wrong. Weren't you the number 2 guy at Tribeca Cinemas? Not the festival, the cinema.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so I did a monthly program. We had a kind of ad hoc group called the Media Coalition of Artists of Color.
Absolutely.
And
yes.
it was Black, Latinos, Asians, all of us had a coalition. We wanted once a month get together and have some veterans and share information. But we could not get into the building unless Lawrence came with the keys. So literally, he was the guy who opened the door. And I think I don't know if was it popcorn? It was something. He ran the facility and reception stand and any kind of tech stuff, whether it be microphones. He did all those things. But the thing that stuck out my mind was he did that, but he also stayed. And really, this man, I think some part of your success is that you paid so close attention to everything. So every speaker, we had some great speakers. And I look, oh yeah, you was paying attention.
Oh yeah.
And you absorbed it all.
That was the benefit.
Yeah. And so I'm talking about 2003 maybe.
Yeah, about that. 2004 probably.
2004, exactly. And so we had this kind of carousel of great speakers, but we could not do anything unless you let us in.
This is true. See, it is different, but it is also, it happened in the same building. My memory is in the same building.
Same building.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that building doesn't exist anymore. The Express at Tribeca is now a beautiful, glossy high-rise there. But
of course it is.
It was a beautiful cinema back in those days.
And so, Warrington, were you the convener of the Media Coalition of Artists of Color?
I was, because I really believe, although the name of my organization, Black Filmmaker Foundation, is 46 years old as of November. But when we were the first kind of coalition around ethnicity, and I realized that's kind of naive, and that the challenges facing us were all people of color facing the same kind of white supremacist exclusion. So we formed an alliance with Latinos, with Asians. And interesting, one experience I had was that it was a group called the Hip Hop. It was called, shucks, I'm blanking. And I said, but the woman who ran it was Colombian. I said, you with the Latinos? She said, no, I'm with hip hop. I said, no, but you're
Martha Diaz, right?
Martha Diaz. Yeah, exactly.
Yep,
and so I said, we argued about why she should be with hip hop and not Colombia. She said, come to my program. I came to her program, and they were hip hop performers from Senegal, from Korea. I said, oh. He said, we are a culture unto ourselves. I said, eye-opening. So we all met on this monthly basis at the cinema that the Loren had the keys to, and we had great work. And people got employment out of it too. There was one woman who was in charge of Nickelodeon, and a young guy who's a filmmaker, did animation. She saw his work, and he got hired right on the spot. So we really were kind of bridge between independent filmmakers, the pure artists, and people who had make a pathway into the industry itself.
And Loren, did you get involved with Warrington through those sort of coalition channels?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, it was an amazing benefit to me to be able to be in that room with creative people of color who were just like-minded individuals, right? And there were, it was an amazing opportunity for networking and just meeting people and sharing the space, which was so important. So, knowing that Warrington and seeing like the reverence that everyone had for Warrington for putting this together and creating this space, I just knew like, all right, I got to stick close to this guy. He is someone that I really, really need to know and want to know. So that's it. And then we kind of followed each other around with different things, which I'm sure we'll get to, but like, film is what started it. But I think our shared passion for immersive storytelling is also something that really, really cemented us.
And Yes, and but you're understating it, because if I reluctantly accept your designation as your mentor, as a film person, I want to reverse that. Return the circle. You are my mentor in immersive space.
Oh man.
Let me tell you what this guy did, which I love to tell the story, because I fell in love with immersive from the very, very beginning. And so I would come, and it was 2 sessions of 4 hours apiece. So I did the 4 hours.
And this is way later, and I'm already a programmer at Tribeca at this point, and
Yes,
I was running
yes.
the immersive
That's right.
section.
And so I did 4. I said, Loren, man, it's I didn't see everything, you know. But they say I have to leave. He said, well, tell you what, why don't you disappear somewhere? And when the second session, this blend in with the crowd. so thanks to Loren, Tribeca was it 10 days?
11 days usually, yeah. 11.
I did 8 hours a day for 11 days.
Whew.
And I mean, I really, really got into it deep. And so in the beginning, you know, because I was with the festival from the very beginning. I was on the very first jury at Tribeca Film Festival. I was known by all the powers that be. So the last year that Loren was there, I said, Loren, hey man, I'm so excited. A new year. Can you just give me the pass? Because I always got a free pass. He said, no, I can't give you one. I said, wait a minute, I've gotten passes for all these years. I can't get a pass. He said, no. I said, why not? Because he said, this year you're on the jury. Oh, okay. So I had my judges, so I saw everything, but this time in a completely different capacity. But my ability to qualify as a jury member, because I saw everything. And Loren made it possible. I mean, I would say I was an expert because I was serious about it. I mean, 8 hours a day, 11 days consecutive.
I want to hear more about both kind of interweaving strands of your work. And I think it would be great if, for listeners, but also for Alec and I, for some context, can you say, first of all, tell us what immersive and VR storytelling is and how it works,
Sure.
and then what it means to produce that kind of work and how that might be different or similar to producing for film.
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, immersive storytelling is basically kind of all of those places where storytelling and technology intersect, right? I think a lot of people may be most familiar with virtual reality, and the idea there. I mean, when I first started programming virtual reality and first was exposed to it, it was primarily 360 video, which really was that was a natural step forward from cinematic storytelling, a new language, but essentially you're looking at 360 degrees of story around you. So you feel, you feel that you're immersed in the storytelling. The director is able to kind of give you the cues that you need, whether through audio or video, to move towards the next part of the story, the next beat of the story. Of course, VR evolved pretty quickly to also encourage you to have agency, right? So what that meant was, with the help of really powerful computers, you could really feel as though you were inside of a story, and you could interact with different elements in those worlds that creators were building. You know, whether it's just something as simple as picking up, a plate on a table, or speaking to another character and them actually speaking back to you. So this all happened in in a very, very short time. The kind of evolution of immersive storytelling. And I was curating it. I was curating it for the longest without producing it, but had had really strong relationships with a lot of producers and a lot of creative technologists who were pushing the boundaries of what it meant to tell stories in this way. So when I had the opportunity to actually step into that world myself, outside of producing, feature films and television, I of course was jumping at it. And I think, it's kind of hard to say the difference. I think the difference is, obviously the technology is quite different. The kind of production cadence is different, but I think really it's just understanding the tools that you have to work with. It's understanding the the relationship that a viewer or an audience member has to the experience. You know, when you are watching a film, you are a passive viewer. When you are experiencing immersive storytelling, you are very active, and you can make, you can actually change the story. You can actually, be a part of it. And I think that's something that both myself and Warrington. I don't want to speak for you, Warrington, but you please jump in. Like, I think that's something that we really responded to as people who love film and people who have made films. It's a new language, and that's super exciting.
And as you said, it's a new experience. I remember one of the most memorable ones. Again, Loren is my bodyguard. He always intervened. So it was a thing called Jack.
Oh yes.
And the line was like forever. He said, come. So he let me cut the line, and I went inside. And at this time, the technology was heavy. It was like a backpack and over your head. And the digital player in there with you as a viewer, it was interactive. You talked to it. You were not only immersed in another world, it was an entity in there who talked to you.
Yeah, a live actor in a motion capture suit.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't know that because you have the headset on,
yes,
and you're interacting with an animated character, but
yes,
it is an actual person who can
precisely
touch you and talk to you.
And they would ask me, for example, they said, sit there. And I knew this was a CGI, but no, it was real. and there's things that were real. I mean, it was so disruptive in a positive way that was all over. I came out, and a person, gave back my headset and all that. Person said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And put their hand out to shake my hand, and I froze. I said, "Oh, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not sure if you're real or not." And the person was real, but it literally took me 15 minutes to say that I was no longer I was out of it. And so that difference is, a movie won't do that. You can remember a great movie, but you don't never feel like you're in the movie. So this is a new frontier that's so powerful, and I'm just so happy that Loren helped me cut the line.
I mean, Warrington has taken it to the next level. He's created his own metaverse at this point. We watch together. So, Warrington has done, how long have you hosted the summit for Black Filmmaker Foundation?
Oh man, 26 years. In
so
fact,
for 26.
And you were there at the last one, which
yes.
For the first time, we actually, it's been supported by Warner's from the very beginning, but we had one as a little difference, and this was at Hudson Yards. And this one was actually a symposium where we brought together filmmakers and film critics. We had multiple MacArthur Fellows and Nobel Prize winners in conversation, dialogue with creatives. So that was something we did differently. And Loren was on very, very, he's one of our speakers. And this guy, as a speaker, I mean, I knew he was a good guy. But the first time I said with the mic, I said, "Damn, brother, you hold the mic real nice,
That's that Dugious training right there.
Oh, there we go.
Dugious training. Erica directed me in musical theater in high school. So I have to give some of that to you too, Erica.
Okay.
I remember hair.
Have you ever heard this guy sing, Warrington?
He sings?
Uh-oh. I mean,
Uh-oh.
he sure does.
Okay.
Someday
we'll do
off
karaoke.
recording.
We'll do karaoke.
Yes. So how do you learn to? You talked, Loren, about the kind of affordances of new technological tools for changing the way we understand storytelling. How do you learn that? How do you learn what the affordances of those tools are? How do you create work that relies on those affordances, especially given that they've just emerged as new possibilities?
Loren, before you respond,
Sure.
may I provide an analogy? It's a very famous Zen story where a student comes to the master, wants to learn a particular thing, and he keeps bringing the old way, and the master says, "You must empty the cup before you can taste the tea." And the thing about this immersive space, if you bring your film head and your film syntax and film vocabulary, you would just be frustrated. You have to empty the cup, and then you can learn the new tech. Is that a fair thing, Loren?
Very fair. I think that it is always relearning, but it is also absorption of others, right? Like I think being able to see other people make work, experiment, not always succeed. I think failure is a huge part of what has actually grown the language of immersive storytelling. It's when you see something and it's like, well, it wasn't quite effective, but that one moment that where you actually felt agency, or that one moment where you have never had this experience before, and it essentially becomes a memory. I think that's what Warrington was talking about too. It's like you can fondly recall a film and say, oh, that was great, but it actually becomes a sense memory at certain times in certain cases. And I think understanding how people are using that technology is what then drives you to go just a step further. So let me see. I'm trying to think if I can give an example, but I think it's something like even with 360 cinema, there were projects where you were kind of dropped into. A lot of people think of it as like, oh, you're on a roller coaster or something. Like, no, but there are projects where you were dropped into beautiful spaces and you could kind of absorb that and look around and turn around and feel great. But the first time that someone, I think it was Gabo Aurora's piece for Clouds Over Sidra.
That was the one. That was the one that turned me out.
Right, which drops you, into a refugee camp in Syria.
Yep.
And puts you at the level of a young girl where she looks into your eyes, essentially. That's when you started to understand, oh, there are so many possibilities here for connection with characters, even where the camera is placed, or where in the case of something that's more interactive, or where you're placed within the game engine. I know we're geeking out right now, Erica.
For me, I'm fascinated by the particular kinds of artistic decisions and relationships between concept and tool. Like for me, the sort of center of arts learning of any discipline is how the tools of the medium allow you to communicate the concepts or ideas that that are at the center of your story, right? And this medium, the tools in some ways are unknown, but what you're saying is the concepts are also unknown. Like when you get the tools right, then new concepts.
That's right. It unlocks the possibility.
But also the subject-object relationship, that dialectic. Immersive allows the experience where you don't feel like, as I make a film, I want to cut to this, look at this, move here. I mean, I'm redirecting you. But in immersive, I'm creating a world in which you interact with. So there's no separation between the experience and you, the director and the audience are merged. And you as the experience, you just look where I can cue you with sound cues and whatever, but you looked where you want to look. And that's really amazing. Loren, I went to one this week. This opened on 57th Street. It was Paris, 1874.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah. And
the other one was Giza, the ancient Egyptian pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I picked the Giza one. Now I'm a veteran. I mean, I told you how many hours I've been able to experience it. But literally at one point, I almost fell down, and I know better. But the floor moved, and I was over a chasm. I know I wasn't on a chasm, but I thought it was. My senses told me I could fall, and I almost fell. It was complete illusion. So that relationship where I can make you, the experiencer, the person receiving the story, believe it so thoroughly that I'm going to fall down, that's another kind of relationship to the audience. So when you talk about the tools, yes, you're right. But I want you to know that those tools means that you, as Loren said, we put you into a world, and after that, you're on your own. I'm I'm guiding you to a certain extent, but I'm really just creating a context for you to gain something.
My name is Graham Isidore. I have a progressive eye disease called keratoconus. Admitting I'm losing my vision has been hard, but explaining it to other people has been harder. Lately, I've been trying to talk about it. Short-sighted is an attempt to explain what vision loss feels like by exploring how it sounds. By sharing my story, we get into all the things you don't see about hidden disabilities. Short-sighted from CBC's Personally, available now.
I want to take us back a little, if I can, to we've been talking a lot about things that y'all are currently doing and how you work together in that space. I would love to hear a little more. You know, Loren, you're a young event producer. You're putting up tables. You're attending events. You get to meet Warrington at the Media Coalition of Artists of Color and Black Filmmakers Foundation. How do you start working together? How does Warrington's expertise filter into your emerging career, and how did his participation in your life impact your filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really has been Warrington's approachability. And he mentioned something earlier, which, I didn't think of it this way at the time, but I think my career really was about observation for a long time. Like, it was when I started working at Tribeca as an event producer, I got that opportunity to observe what Warrington was doing. I also looked around and saw, what else is this organization doing outside of my department? So I met another colleague, Tamir Muhammad, who Warrington knows well and was also a speaker at Black Filmmaker Summit this year. At the time, he was at Tribeca Film Institute, and they had an amazing program for emerging Black filmmakers, screenwriters in particular. And I was like, do you need anybody to read screenplays for you? Because I write screenplays. Like, I can read them. I can give you notes. And Tamir was open for that, and it put me in a closer kind of community with Warrington. I think with Tribeca Film Institute, with the work that he was doing there on the board, and with the community that he continued to cultivate with Black Filmmaker Foundation. So his approachability just made it obvious that this is someone that I could speak to when, I have a question. When I am thinking of, I've seen something that I like, right? Like, that's some of our best conversations are that. It's like, you see a film, I see a film that I like, and then I see Warrington, and we're like, oh, did you see this? Yes, did you see this? And we started talking about it and talking about that filmmaker and what we're hoping for them to do and what we're hoping for the community to do. And that's like, I think that's like the power of the relationship that we have built. It obviously has moved into virtual reality and all of that, but I think the work that I even discovered of Warrington's later, especially his early work as a documentarian, are things that have been very inspiring. Because I think cinema is about, everybody says it's about VR, but cinema is also about building empathy. And it's about learning about places that you may not have been in, or learning those things about characters in a narrative sense, or participants in a documentary where you have some sort of an overlap, right? And you're able to say, I can see myself in this person. I can see myself in this space. And Warrington, he can tell you more, but he made a film called Black at Yale in 1978.
No, 50 years ago, man. 50 years ago.
It's 50 this year? Wow.
50 years.
Wow.
Yeah. That is, right now, I think the sentiments of that film, they hold 50 years later, right? And that's the kind of thing that, like, I think about that when I go into a new production. I think about, like, what can I do that will be something that's indelible and can endure?
But let me take that because again, this man is so unbelievably modest. So my job in this conversation is to pull him back into like his full shine. Many times the relationship between the generations of mentor and mentee, it's like the cliche about when two thieves meet in the night, it is not because he know why we're there. And so right away, I knew who he was. It wasn't fully manifested as it is now. And I had a similar experience as a youngster. One of my important mentors, besides Catherine Dunham, was Harry Belafonte. And he said he had heard about me, but he knew that I was Catherine Dunham. I said, oh. So he said he talked to me only because I was Catherine Dunham. And so there is I don't know what's the word, but we know each other by sight, by sound, by smell. And you can't cheat it. Because believe me, there's a lot of people who say they want help. They don't really want help. They just want to be in the mix. But this man, he seriously, before he opened his mouth, I'm tracking him. He's not missing anything. And he's offering to help. Can I help you in some way? So that sets up a dynamic. So it never has to become formal and official. You immediately, it's like music. If you play in the band and he gets up and starts, oh, you can sing. Oh, you can play. It's a natural affinity. It's a natural synergies. And that's why these relationships get established and become very, very doable. Because from very, very beginning, before the guy we see now on this conversation, he was that way from the beginning. He simply has more proof of who he is now. But he's the same guy from the very beginning.
How much do you think your shared identity as Black men living in America influences that relationship and that seeing of each other?
You mean being in endangered species?
Well, I will allow you all to name
well,
how you think about that.
I think that race has been not as intense as it is now. It is reasons now to fear. Well, just last week, there was an unfortunate experience in the subway where a guy felt he needed to intervene. And he was a white American, former Marine, and is a mentally ill Black man, and he choked him for 6 minutes, and he died. And he went to trial, and he was exonerated. Now the technique he used, I've done martial arts for over 50 years, and I know that choke, and I could take you out in maybe a minute top. So to continue to hold that thing for 6 minutes, you kill somebody with that. I've had it done to me. I've done it to people. It's a very powerful technique. And for him to have choked this man for 6 minutes, that was, but the part about race is that he walked away exonerated. That's disturbing. So I read this morning, in fact, Ishmael Reed, the famous author, he says, lynching in America just got easier. You don't have to buy a rope now.
Mm. Obviously, race is a unifying factor. Being Black men is a unifying factor for Warrington and I, and so many other of our cohort. Right? I think there were a lot of unifying factors for us. I think the world of America hasn't really been built for us, and the world of Hollywood was not built for us, and those things are very easily recognizable. So I think that kind of is it's just one of the many things that we recognize about each other, where it's like, okay, I looked at him and said, you wanted this and you got it, right? You wanted this and you continue to get it. You continue to not just get it, but allow other people to get it and facilitate these possibilities for people to just understand what it even means to navigate a predominantly white space, like the film industry. And so, yes, I think that definitely helped us to see each other. Thieves in the night, you said, Warrington?
That's it. But you know, other thing is though, again, I have such benefits. There was a conversation that Harry Belafonte shared about a conversation he had with Dr. King before he was assassinated. And he said he was very troubled. And Harry said, Martin, what's wrong? What's wrong? He says, I'm really concerned that we do this very important struggle, but always trying to integrate into a burning building. And I've concluded, you said I've got it. I'm convinced that the industry we have been struggling to break into, that was a mistake. We need, it's falling apart around us. You can see all the companies are in tremendous chaos and delay. The technology itself is escalating in a way that doesn't require the infrastructure they used to have. Our challenge now, you can try to lobby to get a room in the plantation, or we can go into the Maroons. I mean, half of my family is indigenous. And those people who went into the swamps, in Florida and escaped, that's the, I think we're challenged to do for self, to build our own industries, our own methods of communication, because with a direct access, you don't need the studios anymore. We have technology now so I feel challenged to figure out how to make that work. So when you asked the question earlier, what's the economics? I'm really focused. There's so much brilliant work being done in this space. Someone has to figure out the business, and that's my current project, to figure out the business of this. So I can have direct to the audience. Nothing intermediating or arbitrating or interfering with the storytelling.
I believe you will crack that code, Warrington.
Full time, every day.
Yep.
My favorite expression, I work on it 24/7, 365, and 366 in case I need an extra day.
On leap years?
Always.
What are some of those other unifying factors, Loren?
I think being storytellers. I think storytelling is transcendent. There are so many different ways to tell stories. I mean, you mentioned, my history in music. Like that's really what that was for me, was how do I tell my story, as an MC, as a singer, like my lived experience, just as a young person coming up in East Harlem. Like, how do I say this in a way that someone in Seoul, Korea understands what I mean by it? So like I think that's the kind of thing that is unifying with Warrington and I. Like I see the kinds of people that he's always able to bring into a space, the kinds of impact that he makes, and the kinds of stories that he likes to tell. And then he convenes storytellers too. Like I feel like, even at the last summit, I was sitting there for maybe 10 minutes and I turned around and Walter Mosley was sitting at the table next to me, and I'm like, wait, what? Like I was not expecting. I hadn't seen Walter at a summit before, right? And like that was amazing to me because, of course, this is like yet another legendary figure. But I think these are the kinds of people that I love to surround myself with, and Warrington loves to surround himself with, and hopefully these are the kind of people that we are. Those that love to tell stories, share stories, and build with others.
And Loren, you mentioned the challenge, for example, to connect to someone in Seoul, Korea. The moment I realized that the power of filmmaking was when I saw an early film by Akira Kurosawa called Ikiru.
Oh, yes.
And in fact, when the movie was over, all the other students got up and left the room. And I stood there. I sat in my chair just shaking. I went to the professor. I said, and you have to remember the critic, Stanley Kaufman.
Okay.
A very famous critic, New Republic. And I said, sir, I just didn't know. I didn't know film could do this. And so the power of cinema has nothing to do with ethnicity, nothing to do with geography. It's the human condition. And master filmmakers make that work. And the person who opened that portal for me was a Japanese filmmaker, but it touched me profoundly, deeply. Because for me, my favorite film of all time, you didn't ask that question, but my favorite film of all time is Redbeard, which is another Kurosawa movie. And it's like, as I think about it, it shakes me now. So the fact that film could do that is just so, that's what one can, if the opportunity to do that with life, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
am fascinated by the idea of storytelling summits as opportunities for learning and mentorship and expansive ideas. Can you talk me through like what goes on at a storytelling summit? How does it work? How do you participate?
Loren came to that one. That was the first time I ever did that because you got to constantly reinvent yourself. And so the industry is mature enough that I want to examine Black film as genre. What is the meaning of that? And so I gave the mic to critics, to scholars, and had the filmmakers be in the audience so we can go back and forth with what it means. So in many ways, I'm not a big believer in group creative exchanges. I believe you have a couple people you have respect for and let them give you feedback. The notion that a room full of people doesn't make sense to me. But I have a couple people, and very few, maybe only one person, I'm a good friend and a huge fan of a filmmaker named Darnell Martin. She did a movie called, her first one was called Like It Like That, but she did a film called Cadillac Records, which is, sometimes I just look at it and it's about the early days of rock and roll, Chess Records in Memphis, and it's just stunning, stunning, stunning. And when you find someone who's brilliant like that, then you go, okay, what do you think? And if she doesn't like it, then maybe I need to go back to the drawing board. It's finding your voice. If someone else has a voice, then they can trust them to look at your voice.
There are also, I think also the people that you convene, right? You have storytellers in different spaces, right? Like I mentioned, Walter Mosley was at one table. I looked to the left, Ruben Santiago Hudson was at the next table, right? And I'm like, okay, this is a room, first of all, a room that I'm not sure I should be in.
He's humble. This guy's too humble.
But second of all, like this is, most of all, this is a room that I am so honored to be in because people are coming from, different disciplines with their own skills to kind of find a common bond and a common way to speak to each other about how we can push certain things forward. And in this case, we were talking a lot about film and we were talking a lot about the film industry and how we know that our stories can make a difference, but often we're not given exactly the same opportunities as others to impress, upon audiences. But not a pity party in any way, shape, or form. Instead, it's all about, excitement, hope, innovation, and solutions. And that's why I say when Warrington says like, I'm trying to figure out a way to do this, to cut out the middleman and get directly to the audience, I'm like, if anyone can do it, he's going to be able to figure something out. He was saying that was the first time that he did this version. I went to one of these summits and it was in virtual reality. Just so you know, like he convened one of these.
Thanks to you.
Well,
I would not know how. Again, I want this session not to end. Any respect I got is because this man broke the rules, by the way. It was illegal. I shouldn't have been there every day for 8 hours a day for 11 days, year after year. Back to the storytelling part, the whole notion, and we challenge some fundamental premises. The premise is that if we would show through our stories our full humanity, that we're complex human beings, then we'll get different treatment. I'm not sure that's the case. And I want that to be discussed. So at one point, we had, what's the woman who wrote the 1619 Project? I'm blanking her name right now.
Nicole Hannah-Jones was there.
Hannah-Jones. And she was in a conversation with the guy who was the former head of, he was on the faculty at Harvard.
That's right. That was a great conversation. She was in conversation with Rashad Robinson.
Yes. And so,
Color of Change.
And the question is, there's been a premise that if we show who we are, we get better treatment. And that we went all the way back to Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. And I'm suggesting that may be a false premise, that people were being mistreated in America, not because they don't know who they were human beings, is that they don't want to allow us to be human beings. And no matter what you can show, you're still going to be excluded and abused and killed. So as you as an artist, if you're using your art to say, hey, I'm a human being like you, respect me, I'm not sure you'll get a result from that. So that was a topic of discussion.
To nerd this into education conversations, one of my missions as a person is thinking about how the way we understand what art making is and can do ought to translate into what we know teaching and learning can do. And I think what you just said, Warrington, is the same conversation that's going on in classrooms and other educational spaces all over the US as well, right? Which is, I think we had this ideal that if we could use teaching and learning as the opportunity to see one another, that we would build that kind of empathetic understanding. And it's an open question about whether that's true and how to do that. And certainly my belief is that storytelling and art making, and I'm fascinated by this idea, by the way, of immersive storytelling as another way, a different way to engender that kind of empathy and agency. But, you know, my belief is that art making is the best chance we have in teaching and learning spaces to do what you're suggesting.
But it also means, if that's true, it also means it's the ultimate tool to create the opposite effect. Birth of a Nation was the first movie ever shown in the White House. And that movie is complete revisionist history. It created all the tropes and stereotypes that shape American race relations. It had a functional value. If you want to exclude, think about it. The indigenous people in America became a cinematic storyline that justified genocide. Cowboys and Indians, how ridiculous was that? And also on the flip side, in the turn of the century, there were no white people. They were Germans, they were French, they were Dutch, they were all these ethnicities. You know, and with tension, I mean, Irish, they were treated very, very badly, and Jews, of course. So, but what cinema did was create a new homogeneous identity called white. Cinema is the tool to create the birth of whiteness. And in that creation of whiteness, people who were actually, they're only white because they had this kind of a cinematic social consensus, then we can exclude everybody else who was not white. So yes, what you're saying, it could do that, but it has, in terms of the last 20th century, it was a tool to do just the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's about intention though, right? I think if you're, what you're saying, Erica, you know, your belief is that art making can affect change. And I do believe that that's true too, but it can affect change in both directions. And I think that's what you're saying, Warrington. Like if you have someone who is either nefarious or ignorant, and they're using a medium as powerful as cinema, you can really change people's minds, or as powerful as VR, right? VR, in many cases, can be even more powerful when it comes to the empathy that you can build and the literal notion of being in someone else's shoes. That's something that can build a bridge that it really can't be done. But I see like there's something like Ramel Ross's Nickel Boys, right? Which is, you know, the film is getting a lot of attention right now, and it is shot entirely in first person. You know, there's something very related to VR about that, right? There are audiences who are responding to it in a certain way that could change their minds and their perspectives, hopefully.
But the qualifier is the incoming Secretary of Education for the United States is when she was the CEO of WWE,
Linda McMahon.
And that's a storytelling platform. And they create these characters.
Yes, it is.
And as you know, around the United States, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, books that expand the dialogues are being yanked off the bookshelf. So as you talk about this possibility of these tools being used that way, the incoming administration said, yeah, it can, but we're not going to allow that. We're going to shut it down. It's almost like our philosophical presumptions, which I think are fair and humane, will be thwarted, literally shut down. So we prepare for that possibility as well.
I will say we were talking off mic, Warrington and I, about this, and I had said, you know, arts educators have been doing things by stealth forever. And so I feel a little with some of my education colleagues who are in more mainstream fields. I've said like, oh, science educators, welcome to the resistance. That, we already, and I mean the we in this room and others who think about the relationship between art making and teaching and learning, we've been doing it on the down low, even in administrative conditions that are kinder to the way we think. And so I feel not Pollyanna-ish about that, but that we already have the tools to continue to push boundaries of empathy and storytelling as a mechanism for positive change, where maybe some of our other creative colleagues who aren't focused on art making don't have as many of those tools readily at their disposal.
And the other tool, as creative tool that we should not overlook, is the ability to use storytelling as subverting genres. I mean, for example, another mentor of mine was Melvin Van Peebles. And when he shot Sweet Sweetback, he said, "Oh, what is this?" He said, "Oh, it's a porno." And when the unions would come to the set, we'd have a sex scene. Now, this is an unbelievably political movie, but he presented it as a porno. And in Brazil, during when Brazil was under a fascist dictatorship, they had a whole school of pornography that was super political. And so art can hide out in disguise, of various art forms. I mean, one of the martial arts I used to practice is called capoeira, which it looks like a dance, but no, it's some deadly fighting, but it has a disguise. So resistance continues oftentimes in disguise. So as an arts educator, don't underestimate the fact that you can do, and even take another one, sociological science fiction. You can talk about today by setting in the future. So we may be entering a phase in which the only way we can continue the kind of radical storytelling we want to do is by placing it in another context so the people who don't look deep won't see it.
That's a whole other conversation that I want to have with you.
It's a good one.
To wrap up this conversation, as much as I hate to, Loren, I'm curious, we are not the youngest of folks. We're not old people, but we're not the youngest of folks. And so
you're young to me.
We've probably ourselves moved into the role of mentor. And I'm just curious how you've carried some of those lessons from Warrington forward into your own mentoring.
Yeah, I am all about sharing and being open. I think a lot of what can be difficult in this industry is people feeling like they don't want to share because they don't want you to take their job, essentially, right? And I think, listen, the more I am able to share and recognize young people that remind me of myself, and that doesn't mean that they are all young Black men. They come from all walks of life. And if I recognize someone who is like myself, and by that I mean who wants to learn, who wants to make something that can change the world, because that's really what it's about. It's like whether you're making, a teen comedy like House Party that Warrington did, or you're making Katrina babies, this should be something that impacts change and gives people something to think about and can make new things, right? So when I meet a lot of young producers and young directors and young writers, I'm an open book. People often look at my CV and they're like, wow, like you've done a lot of different things. Can you tell me how you did that? Or can you tell me like why you did that? And I will tell them all the nuts and bolts of it without any issue. And then I really love learning from young people as well. I think, I have a lot of young producers on my team now at Time Studios who are just incredible in their skill sets. Documentary is not something that I set out to do initially, right? I thought, like I think a lot of people my age, I thought when I went to film school, I was like, I'm going to be a writer director. Like, what do you mean? I'm going to be Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee. Like, what do you think this is? And I think first of all, I discovered very quickly that I really didn't like directing narrative films at all. But also I really learned more about what it meant to make movies. And what it means to make movies is that you make them with a lot of people. And you have to have people with a lot of different skill sets and perspectives. And I just really appreciate that. So I try to pass it along as a mentor and share my own skill sets. And I know what I know, and what I don't know, hopefully I'll learn. That's kind of the way that I think about it.
This was what a great, any conversation where Harry Belafonte comes up as not even the main focus of a story, I feel like that's a good day.
Yeah.
And wait, he was also talking to Martin Luther King in that story.
Well, that's true.
That was a pretty good additional. The 6 degrees of separation that has just occurred on this call is very exciting.
Well, thank you both so much. And seriously, I want to thank you for making a show like this, though.
Yes.
I mean, it's great. It's entertaining. I've been listening to it in preparation.
I'm so glad.
I mean, you know that those first two, like I was like,
I know.
I gotta hear everything about Hunter. But I love, everything that you're doing. And I love that you are bigging up arts education, especially at this time where we need it more than ever and it's in danger. So thank you guys for doing it.
Yes, and please protect yourself, protect this work, because the attack is coming. Let's not get comfortable. What you're doing is extremely important. Please preserve it and protect it.
Oh, thank you. Well, anytime you're in a conversation where the person casually invokes Harry Belafonte as a mentor, feels like a good day. It's one of the most exciting parts of this show is to hear from mentors who, of course, themselves have been mentored, not just because everybody has a mentor, but because I think when you are a person who takes that role on, it's because you yourself have been in the situation to have powerful, exciting, smart, forward-thinking people working with you, right? So not a surprise that if Warrington was mentored by people like Harry Belafonte, he is himself a generous and generative mentor.
I'm just doing the 6 degrees here. So you can talk all you want about art and mentorship. I'm going Warrington to Belafonte to Martin Luther King, which gets you to almost everyone, but certainly gets you to John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, which officially gets you to everyone. Everyone in the 20th century. And that's going to be the 6th. So we got it. We got everyone. We're done. Thanks.
So we've now done the world. One of the things that was the most exciting for me about this conversation was because they were talking mostly about an emerging field and a field that doesn't really have any kinds of established norms or ways of thinking about success. Their mentorship relationship was, and you could hear it in the way they talked to one another, was so much about mutuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Warrington really kept coming back to, Loren is giving me too much credit. Here are all the things that were made possible for me by having Loren in my life, by having him give me access and explanation and understanding. And, I think, first of all, they're both being humble. But that aside, the idea that when you are making art that is in a field that is still evolving, then folks who are coming into the field may at times be more expert than folks who've been there all along. And I felt like that really came through in their conversation. And that's a new way for me. We certainly don't think about that in the context of a classroom. But we also often don't think about that in the context of other forms of mentorship. The assumption is always that the mentor is leading the way, if not always being the guide.
Right. Or that if the reverse relationship is there, it's sort of in moments that might be slightly, what's the right word, sort of infantilized, like, oh, and we're learning from them too. As,
Right.
you know, because the kids say the darndest things, you know, rather than you have a different brain, you're of a different generation than I am, from a different place and time. No, seriously, you're definitely going to know different things than I am and look at the same object from a different point of view. What do you have to say? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really cool. And what stuck out to me about how Warrington provided the opportunity for mentorship was very much this: I am leaving a seat at the table for you, and what you do with that seat will determine the degree of our mutual mentorship relationship. And Loren certainly seems like he took his seat at the table and made incredible use out of the ability to be in that kind of evolving, emerging conversation.
Well, let me ask you about that evolving, emerging conversation, because you now know someone very well who is plugged in, as it were, to this immersive art form. Let me ask you, if I could, a question that connects right to it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Will it
All
maybe
right.
have 3 answers?
It's going to have three answers. I mean, you tell me
Okay.
if you can come up with 3, but
Okay.
I'd like to know 3. If you go and make your request to Loren to create 3 immersive experiences, what would you like those to be?
An immersive participation in a Broadway musical.
1.
A immersive, historically accurate trip to where my relatives were in before they came over on Ellis Island in the Ukraine.
2.
An immersive experience being a parent to quadruplets.
3 and 4 things.
I just think it would be fun to be able to try out what it would be like to wrangle a whole bunch of kids, but then be like, that's done. I don't ever need to do that again.
So you just want him to make you an aunt to someone with more kids than you have for
It's
a couple
true.
minutes.
I have only one baby in my auntie pen
Community.
corral
Yeah,
community.
corral, pen. Yeah, pen.
I keep her in a pen. It's fine. Nobody ask any questions. Well, Alec, I have a question for you. What are 3 ways that our listeners can continue to be involved and to push the conversations about artistry and mentorship forward with our show?
Please subscribe, follow, whatever it is that your platform, your podcast platform allows you to do. Please follow or subscribe to this show.
1.
I don't remember, but probably rate and review. Did we put those as 2 or are they 1? They're one thing. They're one thing.
No, they're 2 things.
They're 2 things.
Yeah.
Then don't review it yet. Rate the show. Give it a lovely rating. Tell people you like the show. That way that helps them find it.
2.
And the 3rd thing, I have an idea. Give us a review. We'd love to read what you think about the show. And be specific. Which episodes do you like? What do you want to hear more of? What do you want to hear less of? We want to hear from you.
3 things. Onward together.
Arts Educators Save the World is hosted by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and produced and co-hosted by me, Alec Lev. Our executive producer is Doug Matica, and our audio producer is Justin Asher. Special thanks to our collaborators, the brilliant and talented Kate Baldwin, and our great friends at Story Pirate Studios, Lee Overtree, Benjamin Salka, and Amy Fiore. Original music is by Dan Lipton, and our artwork is by Lyra Evans. Check out our website, designed by Cole Locasio, at www.artseducatorspodcast.com. We're on Instagram at Arts Educators Podcast, and you can write to us with your questions and comments at contact@artseducatorspodcast.com. You can also find us at a place called YouTube. And wherever you're listening, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. It really helps the show. We're proud to be sponsored in part by the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Gibb Faculty Fellowship. Arts Educators Save the World was created by Erica Rosenfeld Halverson and Alec Lev.